That breaking news yesterday about the former Sars official Johan van Loggerenburg, also, of course, the whistleblower, and that his home had been burgled. On Friday, you saw here the former government spokesperson Themba Maseko, also a whistleblower, explaining to you how people had gone onto his roof just hours before he was due to speak at a whistleblowers conference. So what is going on? Cynitha Stimpel, the person who blew the whistle on what was happening at SAA herself. She testified at the Zondo Commission. She joins us now. Cynthia, good afternoon to you, and I really appreciate you coming in. Thank you. It's really the context here. I mean, in the last few days, we see these incidents happening at the homes of true whistleblowers. What do you think is going on here?
Thank you for inviting me today, Stephen. Yes, I do agree that it is some form of intimidation. Themba Maseko felt it, so does Johan van Loggerenburg. I feel that it's a way for us to either keep quiet or step back into the shadows. It's a way of telling us that should there any be form of further prosecutions or convictions, that we know where you live and we can find you. So I think it's a direct threat. Yes.
I mean, there are possibly two things that these robberies do. I mean, more than two things, maybe. But the one is, you know, the idea of looking for evidence, trying to take it, okay? But the second is the intimidating effect. I mean, it must have an intimidating effect.
Exactly, and it leaves you traumatized. If someone's come into your safe space, your sanctuary, and broken into your home, you actually do not feel the same thereafter. And I can fully relate to what's happened with Johan van Loggerenburg as well as Themba Maseko, because we've all been through that. We've had burglaries in our homes, but when it's defined specifically about certain information or evidence that you have, it becomes far more disconcerting.
Do you think it's going to work? I mean, is it going to make people, is it going to silence people? I mean, we've seen you speak in public, we've seen Johan van Loggerenburg, we've seen Themba Maseko. All of you have really, you know, the English expression has been through the mill. I mean, It's been a very rough time. Is this going to silence people?
I don't think so. I think whistleblowers are more enamored to speak out. They feel that here's a platform, and since the State Capture Commission report has come out and been released, it's shown some specific way that they have been vindicated in some way. And now it's to see that the recommendations are enforced. For the whistleblowers themselves, we have to be vigilant, we have to take care, we cannot be negligent in any way. And we've seen with Babita Diokaran, who was shot right in her driveway. So for us, that was scary from that day. I think we all suddenly had to go on high alert, upgrade our security, and just be vigilant all the time.
I mean, there are other examples as well. Tabiso Zulu in KwaZulu-Natal, he, of course, has information around the Sindiswa Magaka murder.
Yes.
He also, and that's coming from the police.
Correct. And he's in hiding constantly. He doesn't sleep in one place 2 nights in a row. And I mean, imagine how upsetting that is when you have children to take care of and you have to see that they go to school. How do you manage your life like that? So it's really upsetting, and definitely a severe form of intimidation.
There must be several people that would have a duty to protect whistleblowers. I mean, would you include government? Would government have a duty to protect whistleblowers here?
Definitely. Firstly, from a perspective that we've all given evidence at the State Capture Commission, and there alone there should have been already some form of security, either physical security or some way of coming to your home and saying, what security do you have and can we assist in that way? From all the whistleblowers I've chatted to, no one's had that. The ones that have personal security detail or their own security at the home, it's all from their own pocket, or others who are getting sponsored this type of security. The second thing is, if you leave yourself open, like for instance, Babita having taken her daughter to school, having security in her home, and the weakest point was her coming and entering her home at the garage or her security gate. And that's what they watch out for. So how can one then protect oneself? And therefore government needs to be involved to this level.
So we've had yourself and other people. I mean, Themba Maseko is a former government spokesperson. He is, in many ways, a product of the movement which still governs the country. So people have been testifying in public, and no one from government, no one from the police, no one from any government entity has offered any protection at all.
None at all, Stephen. None at all.
Sure.
And that's the shocking part of it. So.
Is there also a duty on other people in society? I mean, some security companies, I imagine, will take this quite seriously. Sometimes they will probably only do it for money. But do you think that maybe, you know, everyone in South Africa has a bit of a duty to look after whistleblowers? And that would also include private companies giving people jobs.
Yes, indeed. And that's part of the broader protection of whistleblowers. When people talk about protection of whistleblowers, the first thing they think of is probably physical protection. It's not necessarily that. But it does cover that. It also doesn't necessarily mean, when you read the Protected Disclosures Act, it states no detriment suffered from occupational, your workplace, and yet you do. So there's this holistic view that needs to be considered for whistleblowers. So firstly, it is their jobs, it is their careers that are at stake. If you speak to many of us, we were unable to continue the careers that we started in. We had to either reinvent ourselves or go into a complete different tangent. The second thing is that you suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder, and many of those all additional health conditions. So with that, you're going to, if you don't have medical aid, you don't have a job, who covers those costs? It's either the family, there's a knock-on effect of what happens to your family, to your spouse, to your children. That's never taken into account. The third side is that physical security, your home security upgrades, and you mentioned, does society have a responsibility there? Society is already impacted by paying taxes, you know, in one way. The other way is that we've got our SAPS. What are they doing to protect society? They are not following their own mandate. We have to pay for our own private security if we need anything, if something happens at our homes, and it's the private security that comes to your home first if there's a break-in rather than the police. The other aspect to protect whistleblowers is also just this holistic view of how do you maintain them financially so they become an asset to the organization, to our economy, rather than a burden. So there's this vast way of looking at it for protection for whistleblowers.
In the meantime, after everything that's happened, after what Themba Maseko said, after what you have said, another whistleblower lost their house, if I remember, for financial reasons. We've had report after report. I mean, at SARS we've had two reports. We had the Newzroom Commission report and the Zondo Commission report. No one faces criminal charges yet. I mean, that must be the biggest slap in the face that I can think of, that after all of this public evidence, no one has been charged by the National Prosecuting Authority.
Indeed, and we've seen that. So with the Newzroom Commission, has anyone yet been convicted? No. We know that the Zondo Commission is just an inquiry, but recommendations have been made in Part 1. And I firmly state that action needs to start happening right now. There's areas like Ms. Mayeni, Tamoyane, various other names that have been implicated, organizations that have been implicated, and if we had a strong NPA, they could have already started acting on it, and they haven't. I know for 2 years now, Ms. Batoya has been saying that the whole NPA has been hollowed out, there isn't enough capacity, we can't go ahead. The fact is that we need to start. How then do we take our law serious? At the moment, I see everything as a farce. You know, if the Zondo Commission recommendations aren't enforced, what then? We can look back and say, what do we want for our country? I believe right now is that we're going to need civil society to come on board to help. We need those citizens to stand up and say, no more now. We need to start seeing action. We need all those criminals charged. We can't have people going on with impunity and just carrying on regardless of the law.
I shudder to think about what would have happened if people like yourself hadn't done what you have done incredibly bravely. I shudder to think about what would have happened in government if all of the information that we've now seen as a result of blowing the whistle didn't come out. And yet, after everything that's happened, no prosecutions, no convictions, nothing, nada. I don't know if there's any incentive now on someone in government now who sees the wrong thing, whether they be at, I don't know, SAA or Eskom or Denel or wherever they are. If there's any incentive after what they've seen happen to you, happen to Themba Maseko, Johan van Loggerenburg this week, if there's any incentive for people to blow the whistle in the future, what does our society look like if we don't have people blowing the whistle on wrongdoing?
Exactly. We become a society with no moral compass. Is that what we want? Is that the legacy we would like to leave to our grandchildren? I certainly don't want to do that. And so for me specifically, is I'd like to encourage people. We want to stop corruption. It's no use talking about it at a braai or over our dinner table when we ourselves don't hold ourselves accountable. So it starts with me. I need to hold myself accountable, and I need every other person, every other citizen to hold themselves accountable. And it goes to President Cyril Ramaphosa too. I mean, he cannot stand there and say things like, we need to stop corruption, we need to protect whistleblowers, and he doesn't put his money where his mouth is, and he does nothing about it. He also has to hold himself accountable. If he says anything, he's got to make sure it happens. And so we need to do that as society, we need to do it as citizens, and we need to start looking at South Africa. What trajectory do we want for South Africa for the future? We cannot continue this way. You can almost see we're on the cliff edge, we're about to fall. You know.
Cynitha Stimpel, I really appreciate you coming on. It's an honor to actually meet you. Is the whistleblower, of course, at SAA. I really do appreciate the time.